That night, the Texas sky burned red as blood. 6 years of building, a house, a barn, every plank hammered by calloused hands, all of it swallowed by fire in a single night. A man stood barefoot in the cold grass. He didn't cry, he didn't run. He just stood there and counted the beams as they fell, counted the cracks splitting the dark, counted the riders disappearing beyond the hill. He knew who lit the match. But knowing and proving were two different countries, and he didn't have the fare to cross. 7 years later, a lone rider moves across the Arizona desert, a hand-drawn map folded soft in his coat pocket from being opened too many times. Ahead of him lies a stretch of land the townsfolk only whisper about, a place where men ride in with intentions and ride out with none of them intact, and somewhere deep inside the old chief's camp, between two silent teepees, a woman stands wrapped head to foot in a white veil. For 5 years, not a single soul has seen her face. Cole McBride had not slept in a real bed in 11 days. He knew this because he counted. That was something he did now. Counted days, counted miles, counted the number of times he refilled his canteen from creeks that tasted like rust and old regret. Counting kept his mind busy, and a busy mind didn't wander back to Texas. He rode into the town of Red Rock Flats on a Thursday afternoon, or maybe Wednesday. The counting had slipped somewhere around the New Mexico border. The horse didn't care what day it was. The horse just wanted water. Cole gave her that first. Red Rock Flats was the kind of town that looked like it had given up on itself years ago, but hadn't gotten around to lying down yet. 3 saloons, 1 church, a general store with a sign that leaned so far to the left, it was practically asking to fall. 2 streets that crossed each other in the middle and didn't go anywhere particularly useful after that. A water trough that needed cleaning and a hitching post that needed replacing, and a dog sleeping in the exact center of the road, apparently unbothered by the concept of hooves. Cole let Duchess drink from the trough while he looked the town over. It wasn't much, but it had a general store, and a general store had information, and information was what he needed before he went any further east. He tied Duchess to the hitching post outside the general store and went in. The man behind the counter was maybe 60, with a beard that hadn't been introduced to scissors in some time. He looked up from his ledger, looked back down, then looked up again, like he was deciding whether the stranger was worth the full attention. He decided yes. "You lost?" the man said. "No, you look lost. I look tired," Cole said. "There's a difference," the man grunted, set his pencil down, decided this stranger was worth at least a full look and gave it to him. Cole was 32, but moved like a man who had been 32 for a very long time. Tall, lean in the way that comes from not having enough and not complaining about it. His coat was brown and had seen better decades. His hat was pulled low, not from shyness, from habit. There was a quality to him that the storeman had seen before, in men who had been moving a long time. Not restless, something more contained than restless. Like a river that had been narrow for so long it had forgotten it was supposed to be wide. "What do you need?" the man asked. "Information," Cole said. "Then supplies. Information's free. Supplies cost. Fair enough." Cole set a folded piece of paper on the counter. A map. Hand-drawn, edges worn soft from being opened and closed too many times. This land here, east of the Hasayampa Wash, right along the river bend. The man didn't look at the map. He looked at Cole. "You're pointing at Apache land," he said. "I'm pointing at land that isn't on any deed I've seen filed in the county office, because nobody files deeds on land they want to keep breathing over." Cole waited. He was good at waiting. It was one of the things years of moving had given him. The patience of a man who has learned that rushing doesn't change where you end up, only how tired you are when you get there. The man sighed, picked up the map, studied it for a moment, with the reluctant expression of someone being asked to confirm bad news they already knew was coming. "That stretch there," he said, tapping a spot near the river bend with one thick finger. "That runs right up against Duskhorn's territory." He's the chief. Been there longer than this town. Longer than most things. Is the land fertile? Best water access in the territory. Then I want it. The man put the map down slowly. Like it might bite him, son, he said, with the particular exhaustion of a man who has given good advice that nobody ever takes, over many years to many strangers, and has not yet stopped trying. People who ride into Duskhorn's territory with intentions don't generally ride back out with those intentions intact, or sometimes with anything intact. I'm not going in with bad intentions. Doesn't much matter what kind you've got when you're on the wrong end of an Apache lance. Cole folded the map back up, tucked it into his coat with the careful habit of someone who has learned that important things need to be in the same place every time. I'll take flour, he said. Salt pork, some rope, and if you have decent coffee, I'll take a pound of that too. The man stared at him. Then he started gathering supplies, because some men you can argue with, and some men you just supply, and wish luck to and watch right away and wonder about afterward. Cole ate outside on the steps of the general store. Hardtack and the last of some dried meat he'd been carrying since Santa Fe. He chewed slowly and watched the street do what streets do in small desert towns in the late afternoon. A woman crossed with a basket of laundry balanced on her hip. Two men argued in front of the saloon about something that had started as a card game and become a philosophical dispute about the nature of fair dealing. A dog, possibly the same dog from the road, or perhaps Red Rock Flats, simply had a surplus of philosophical dogs, slept in the exact center of the street, apparently unbothered by the concept of hooves, and apparently having made a firm decision about it, normal. All of it normal. Cole had forgotten what normal felt like from the inside. He knew what it looked like from the outside. He'd been watching it from the outside for 7 years. Watching other men live in houses they owned, eat meals cooked in kitchens that were theirs. Wake up in the morning knowing the ground under their feet belonged to them. He'd watched it from bunkhouses and campsites and the wrong side of property lines, and it had never stopped looking like something worth having. Texas. He didn't let himself think about it directly. He never did. He came at it sideways, the way you approach a horse that's been spooked. Slow. Careful. From an angle that doesn't look like you're approaching at all. The ranch. His ranch. 40 acres along a creek that ran clear even in August when everything else dried to dust and complaint. A house that wasn't much, but it was his. 2 rooms and a covered porch, and a door that hung slightly crooked and needed lifting when you opened it, which he'd always meant to fix and somehow never did. A barn he'd built himself, 1 board at a time, over 2 summers, with help from a neighbor who charged nothing and accepted whiskey and conversation as fair payment. Hands that were always working, a life that had the shape of something real, something growing, something that might outlast him if he gave it enough time. Then the fire. 1 night. 1 fire. And everything he'd built in 6 years was ash by morning. He'd stood in the field watching it burn. Couldn't move. Couldn't think straight enough to move. Just stood there in his bare feet in the cold grass while the barn collapsed in on itself, with a sound like the world caving, and the house followed, and the creek caught the orange light and threw it back at him like the world was demonstrating something he wasn't meant to forget. He knew it wasn't an accident. The men who'd been pressuring him to sell for 2 years, men with lawyers and land agents, and the particular smooth confidence of people who never have to ask twice for anything because the first time always works. He knew, couldn't prove it. Knew it the way you know things that live in the chest rather than the head. Certain and useless, simultaneously. Knowing and proving are 2 entirely different countries. And Cole McBride didn't have the passage fare to get from one to the other, so he left because staying meant watching other men live on what had been his land. Watching them improve what he'd built and call it theirs. Cole McBride was a lot of things. Stubborn, quiet, better with animals than people. prone to fixing things that nobody asked him to fix. But he was not the kind of man who could survive that specific kind of watching. 7 years since then. 7 years of other men's cattle, and other men's fences and other men's sons. Sets, seen from the wrong side of property lines that were never going to be his. 7 years of good work, done well and going to bed at the end of it in bunkhouses that smelled like other men and other lives. He was done with it. He wanted his own. He finished eating. Brushed crumbs off his coat with the brisk efficiency of a man who has gotten comfortable with not wasting time on small things. Looked at the map one more time. The river bend, the curve of the land where water and grass would make something possible. And rode east. The desert did what deserts do in the late afternoon. It got bigger. Not physically bigger. It was the same desert it had always been. But the quality of space changed as the sun started its downward lean, everything expanding in the amber light, the sky going from blue to something that didn't have a good English name, something between gold and grief, and the shadows of the saguaro cacti, stretching out long and theatrical across the pale ground. The silence got the kind of weight to it that made you aware of your own breathing, your own heartbeat. The small sounds of the horse moving underneath you, Cole rode. His horse, a gray mare he'd bought 3 years back from a widow in New Mexico, who'd named her Duchess, and hadn't been wrong to, moved steady and unbothered beneath him. Duchess had the temperament of someone who had long ago accepted that life involved a great deal of going places, and had made her peace with it entirely. She didn't spook at shadows. She didn't fuss at strange smells. She just moved forward with the patient confidence of an animal that trusted her own feet and had no strong opinions about destinations. Cole talked to her sometimes. Not conversation, more like thinking out loud at a creature who wouldn't repeat it and wouldn't judge it, and would keep whatever he said between the two of them and the open desert. Land along a river, he said to the back of her ears, which were angled back just enough to show she was listening. That's all I want. Something that floods right in spring and dries steady in summer. Decent grass. Room to run maybe 20 head to start. Build up from there. Duchess flicked one ear. The other stayed forward. I know, Cole said. I know what he said. The other ear came back. I'm not saying it's not a risk. I'm saying I've been taking risks for 7 years that haven't paid off in anything permanent, and at least this one has landed at the end of it. Real land. Water land. The kind that means something. Both ears stayed forward after that, pointed at the horizon with the serene certainty of an animal that had decided the conversation was concluded. Cole decided to interpret this as reluctant agreement. He made camp at a dry wash as the sun finished its business with the day. Built a small fire from wood he'd picked up along the way, a habit from years of never knowing when there'd be another chance. Made coffee that was better than anything he'd had in weeks, which wasn't saying much, but was saying something. Sat with it and watched the stars come out one at a time, methodical, like they were being switched on by someone working slowly through a very long list and not inclined to rush. He thought about what the storeman had said. Duskhorn. Apache. Land that nobody filed deeds on because they wanted to keep breathing over it. Cole had dealt with Apache traders twice in his years of moving. Both times the exchange had been straightforward. They wanted fair dealing, they received fair dealing. Everyone parted on reasonable terms. He didn't carry the fear that some men carried about the Apache. He'd never understood that particular fear exactly, though he understood it existed and was sometimes well-founded. Every man he'd ever met, of any origin, background, or language, had wanted the same fundamental things. Food enough, safety enough, something worth protecting, something worth building. The specifics differed. The foundation didn't. He planned to be honest about what he wanted and honest about what he had to offer. That had always been his approach to difficult conversations. It didn't always work, but it was the only approach he could make himself use. without feeling like he was already losing something important before the conversation started. He'd built a life on honesty once. It had gotten burned down, but that wasn't honesty's fault. He finished his coffee, rinsed the cup with a small splash of water and packed it away, lay back and looked at the stars. Let his mind go quiet in the way it sometimes could. Out here, away from anything that wanted something from him. Was asleep in under a minute. He found the edge of the territory the next afternoon. He knew it before he saw any marker or sign. There was a shift in the air, a quality of stillness that was different from the desert's usual stillness. Not the absence of activity, but the presence of attention. The kind of quiet that means someone is watching and has decided not to announce themselves yet. Cole had felt that quality before in different contexts. It always meant the same thing. He didn't reach for anything. Didn't speed up, didn't slow down. Just kept riding at the same steady pace and let his hands stay where his hands should be when a man isn't planning anything. Then he saw them. 3 riders on the ridge above and to his right. Apache. Still as the rocks they sat against. So still that he might have missed them if the afternoon light hadn't caught the dark of a horse's flank at exactly the right angle. They were watching him with the complete attention of people who had been doing this a long time and were very good at it. Cole kept riding. They came down the ridge in a wide, unhurried arc and were alongside him before he'd gone another quarter mile. Smooth, practiced. The kind of movement that doesn't leave gaps for panic to fill. The one in the center said something in Apache. A question, from the tone of it, though Cole couldn't make out more than the shape of the words. He understood exactly 2 words of Apache, neither of which was useful in this specific moment. "I'm looking for Duskhorn," Cole said, keeping his voice level and his hands visible. "I'd like to speak with him about land. I'll pay fair price for my time, if that's how it's done here." The 3 riders looked at each other with the brief, practiced communication of men who have worked together long enough to talk without talking. Then the center one said something to the others, and 2 of them moved to either side of Cole, precise as water finding its level, and the 3rd moved to the front, and the arrangement was made without any particular drama or threat. Cole was being escorted, possibly to Duskhorn, possibly somewhere else. He kept his hands where they were and rode. The camp was larger than he'd expected. It spread along a flat stretch of ground near the river that Cole had been following. The same river that bent so promisingly on his hand-drawn map. Tippus arranged in a pattern that made a certain sense once you looked at it long enough. Open where it needed to be open, sheltered where shelter mattered. Large hands with calloused palms. Oriented toward the water with the practical intelligence of people who had been living in this landscape long enough to understand what it required of them. Horses. Moved in a rough corral at the eastern edge of the camp. Good horses. Well kept. Women worked near cook fires, their movements efficient and unhurried. Children ran between the teepees, in the perpetual motion of children everywhere, which is roughly everything at once, one direction, all directions simultaneously. It was, Cole thought, as he rode in with his escort and the camp turned its attention toward him, an actual home, not a temporary arrangement, not a makeshift situation. A home, the kind that had been built by people who intended to stay, who understood the ground they were on, and had organized their life around it with care. He hadn't been inside a home like that in a long time, not as a participant, as a traveler, as a hand working someone else's land. He'd passed through plenty. But this was different. This was the real thing. People stopped what they were doing to watch him come in. Not hostile. Something more careful than hostile. The alert attention of people who don't get many unannounced visitors and have learned through experience that unannounced visitors tend to mean something. And the meaning isn't always comfortable. He was taken to the center of the camp. Duskhorn was waiting. He was not what Cole had expected, though Cole had made a deliberate effort not to expect too much. Names carry freight they haven't always earned, and he'd learned to unpack that freight carefully before deciding what to keep. But Duskhorn, the man who stood before him, was large. Not tall exactly, not built for height, but broad and substantial in a way that occupied space completely, without waste or excess, solid as a well-placed foundation stone. His hair was gray and black, in roughly equal measure, worn long, in two braids that fell over his shoulders with the weight of something that had been growing for decades. His face had more lines than a map of the territory, and told more stories than most men managed in a lifetime. His eyes were the specific dark brown of someone who had been paying close, careful attention for 55 years and had forgotten very little of what they'd seen. He wore no ceremony. Leather shirt, practical. Boots worn down to the shape of his feet. A single piece of bone, carved into something Cole couldn't immediately identify, hung at his throat on a thin cord. He looked at Cole the way a man looks at something he hasn't decided the nature of yet. Not with suspicion exactly, but with the patient withholding of judgment that takes more discipline than most people realize. Cole met his gaze directly, not aggressively. "Just honestly, Duskhorn," Cole said. The chief said nothing. "Let the escort explain," which they did in Apache, and Cole caught nothing of it, except the general shape of an introduction, names and purpose being communicated in a language he didn't have. Duskhorn listened to all of it without taking his eyes off Cole. When the escort finished, there was a pause that was long enough to be a statement of its own. Then Duskhorn spoke. His voice was lower than Cole had expected. Not quiet, it carried fine, but placed low, like a sound that comes from somewhere deep and unhurried. One of the younger men translated, haltingly, "He asks what you want." "I want to buy land," Cole said. "The stretch east of the wash, along the river bend. I have money. I'll pay fair price, whatever that means to you." Translation. Pause. More words from Duskhorn. "He says the land is not for sale." "Not to strangers." Cole nodded. He had expected this. It would have been strange if the answer had been anything else. "I understand. Is there anything I can offer that would change that?" "I'm willing to talk about terms." Translation. Longer pause this time. And then something shifted in Duskhorn's expression. Not softening, not warming, but something underneath the surface of his face moving, like a decision being worked through from the inside out. He spoke again. More words this time. The translator's expression went careful in a way that meant what he was about to say was going to be complicated to translate without changing its weight. He says, "There is one way. One way only. If you marry his daughter, then the land is yours. You become part of the family. Part of the people. You belong here." Cole let that sit. Let it settle into the space between them and take up the room it needed. "His daughter," Cole said. Translation. Duskhorn nodded once. "Precisely. Can I meet her first?" Cole said. It seemed like a reasonable question. It seemed like the minimum of reasonable translation. Something from Duskhorn. Brief. The translator looked at the ground for a moment before answering. "He says she does not speak to strangers. She wears a veil. Always. She does not show her face. Why?" The translator hesitated, then put the question to Duskhorn. Duskhorn's answer was brief, delivered without inflection, like someone stating a fact about weather or geography, something that simply was and required no emotional surround. The translator said, "Because she is ugly, the ugliest woman in the tribe. That is why no man wants her. That is why she wears the veil. Day and night." Around them, several of the warriors who had been listening, not pretending not to listen, just standing at the respectful edge of the conversation, found reasons to look elsewhere. A woman carrying water passed, slowed her pace, then moved on with more purpose. An old man near a fire who had been whittling a piece of wood went still and stared at the ground between his feet. The whole camp flinched, quietly, the way a place flinches when a wound gets touched that everyone knows about and nobody has the words to fix. Cole looked at Duskhorn. The chief was looking back at him. Expression neutral as rock. Eyes not quite neutral. Something behind them that Cole couldn't name yet but filed away to think about later. Cole took off his hat, turned it in his hands once, slowly, feeling the worn brim between his fingers. "I'll need to think for a moment," he said. Duskhorn nodded. Apparently that was acceptable. Apparently he had expected it. Cole thought. He thought about 7 years. About counting miles and days and canteen refills. About sleeping on the wrong side of other people's property lines, in bunkhouses that smelled like other men's lives, under skies that were beautiful and impersonal and owed him nothing. About being 32 and having nothing that was going to survive him. No land, no structure. No thing he'd built that would still be standing when he was gone. He thought about Duchess and how the mare was getting older and couldn't be ridden across the territory indefinitely. He thought about the way the land along that river bend had looked on his map. The curve of it, the specific way the river bent. That meant flooding in spring and steady water through summer. The kind of access that would grow grass in a place that had never been overgrazed. The kind of start that a man could build something real on if he had the land and the time. He thought about what it would feel like to drive a fence post into ground that was his. The specific physical reality of that, the weight of the post, the resistance of soil that hadn't given way to anyone before, the knowledge that the line he was drawing on the earth was a line he was drawing. And then he thought about something he hadn't planned to think about. He thought about the way the camp had flinched, a whole community. Quietly, together, wincing at those words the same way you wince when someone presses on a bruise. Not in surprise, because you knew the bruise was there, but in the involuntary physical response to pressure on something tender, ugly. "No man wants her." Those words had weight here that was heavier than the chief's neutral delivery. Weight that didn't come from nothing. Weight that had been accumulated, over time, through repetition. Through something that had been said enough times in enough context that the whole camp carried the echo of it in their bodies even when nobody was speaking. Whatever the full story was, it was a story worth at least knowing before he made any decisions. And the way the camp had flinched told him it was a story with more in it than the 6 words the translator had used. Cole put his hat back on. "I'll do it," he said. "I accept." A sound moved through the camp, not loud. Nothing so simple as loud, just a ripple. An invisible thing passing through people who were doing other things, making them pause, making eyes go to other eyes, making the particular almost silence of a place that has just heard something unexpected. Warriors exchanged looks with the speed of people who already knew what the looks meant. Women near the fires paused mid-motion. The old man with the whittling looked up for the first time, his knife stopping where it was. One of the elder warriors, an old man with the kind of face that has outlasted a great deal of weather and history and disappointment, shook his head slowly, just once. The slow, deliberate shake of a man watching someone step toward the edge of something and choosing not to speak because the stepping has already begun, and speech can't stop what's already in motion. Duskhorn studied Cole for a long moment. The patience of it was remarkable. Not the patience of someone waiting for something to change, but the patience of someone completing an assessment they'd begun some time ago. Then he said something to the translator. "You will stay here 3 days before the ceremony. We will give you shelter and food. I appreciate that. Do not try to see her before the ceremony. Do not seek her out. She will come to you when the time is right, if she chooses to." Cole nodded. "One more thing," he said. Duskhorn waited. "Does she know about this? Does she have a say in it?" The translator looked at Cole with an expression that seemed to be somewhere between surprised and uncertain, as if the question had arrived from an unexpected direction, and he was still working out where to put it. He translated. Duskhorn was quiet for a moment. Something crossed his face, too fast to read. Then he said something. Brief. Her say was given. She knows. It wasn't exactly the answer Cole had wanted. but it was the one that was available. He filed it alongside the other things he didn't have the full information on yet. As Cole turned to follow the young warrior who had stepped forward to show him to his shelter, Duskhorn said something else, without the translator this time. In English, low and deliberate, placed for Cole's ears only. "I will know if you are the right kind of man." "I always know." Cole didn't turn around, just kept walking, noted that the chief's English was a great deal better than he'd let on, and filed that away too. That was when he saw her. He almost missed her. He was cataloging the camp the way he cataloged all new places, methodically, storing the layout, the distances between structures, the location of water and horses, and the various activities of daily life. His eyes were doing their useful work, and his mind was organizing what they found. And then something at the edge of his vision made everything stop. She was standing between two teepees, maybe 40 yards off, in a space where the afternoon shadow fell long and blue and cool. Standing completely still, she was entirely white. Not her, the veil. It covered everything from the crown of her head to the ground at her feet. A single fall of white cloth that barely moved in the desert wind. No face, no hands, no definite shape beneath the cloth. Just the suggestion of a person inside a column of white, motionless. Present in the way that things are present when they are paying complete attention. She could have been a statue. She could have been something else entirely. Except, Cole had been watched enough in his life to know when it was happening, and it was happening now. Behind that veil, behind whatever distance of cloth and shadow separated her from the world, she was looking at him. He could feel it the way you feel weather coming before you can see it. Not ceasing it yet, just sensing the pressure of it changing something in the air. He stopped walking for a moment, thought about raising his hand. Just a small thing, a small acknowledgement, showing he'd noticed, that he wasn't going to pretend she wasn't there, that whatever this arrangement was, he was at least the kind of man who acknowledged people. Before he could decide, the young warrior touched his arm gently. "Your shelter is this way." Cole looked forward, walked, but he turned his head once more before the angle of the types blocked the sightline. She was still there, still, watching. The shelter they gave him was small but sufficient in every way that mattered. Hides layered against a frame that was sturdier than it appeared from outside. A bedroll that smelled of cedar smoke in the pleasant way of things that have been kept clean and stored with care. A clay pot of water, cool. Dried meat and flatbread set out on a piece of worked leather. Enough for tonight and into tomorrow. Cole sat on the bedroll and took stock of his situation. He had agreed to marry a woman he had never seen. A woman whose father had, in front of his entire community, called her the ugliest woman in the tribe. A woman who stood in shadows in a white veil and watched strangers arrive with a gaze he had been able to feel through 40 yards of open air and a layer of cloth. He was either going to die or get a very good piece of land. Possibly both. The two outcomes were not necessarily exclusive. He ate the flatbread, which was better than it had any obligation to be. Drank the water. Sat in the quiet of the shelter and let the sounds of the camp move around him. Voices in Apache, the particular rhythm of a domestic life being lived with familiarity. Children at some distance, horses shifting their weight in the corral. Normal sounds. The sounds of a place that knew what it was and had been doing it for a long time. He lay back and stared at the hide ceiling. Definitely, possibly both. The next morning he got up before the camp did, or almost before. By the time Cole stepped outside, blinking in the early gray light, there were already women at the fires and men already with the horses, already at work. He'd always thought of himself as an early riser. Apparently there was an entire level of early he hadn't been accessing. He went to where water had been set out for washing and cleaned himself up as thoroughly as the circumstances allowed. Someone had left a bar of rough soap near the basin. He used it. Looked at his reflection in the still water. a face that had been outside for a long time, and wasn't particularly bothered by it, but could maybe do with something to do. He went back to the open area near the main fires. Stood there, didn't know exactly what to do with himself, which was unusual. Cole McBride was not a man who often didn't know what to do with himself. He had a reliable instinct for finding things that needed doing and doing them. Show him a fence with a broken post, and he'd fix the post. Show him a calf stuck in a creek bed, and he'd get the calf out. Show him a piece of equipment that wasn't working, and he'd take it apart, until he found the piece that had given up its purpose. But standing in an Apache camp 3 days before his own wedding to a woman he'd never spoken to, in a community whose language he didn't have and whose customs he barely understood, yeah, he stood there for a moment. Then he looked around, the way he always looked around, and saw a pile of wood near one of the outer teepees that needed splitting. Cole found an axe and started splitting wood. Nobody asked him to. That was the thing. He didn't ask permission, didn't look around for approval or acknowledgement. Just picked up the axe and found a good splitting stump and started working, and after about 10 minutes of watching him, with various degrees of suspicion and confusion and something approaching scientific interest, the camp seemed to collectively decide that this particular stranger was probably not about to do anything alarming, and went back to its own business. He worked for 2 hours. Good clean work, the kind that asks nothing of the mind, and gives the body something definite to do. He split wood until the pile was done, and then found another pile that needed doing and split that too. Then he found a section of fence near the horse corral where a post had been listing badly to one side for what looked like some time, and he fixed that too. Found the right tools by looking at what was nearby and reasoning about what made sense. Made the repair properly, not just adequately. He was in the middle of checking the tension in the rope across the corral gate. It was fraying in a way that mattered if the horses decided to test it. When he became aware of being watched, not the veil. This was different. This was open watching, the specific quality of attention that belongs to a man who has decided you're not worth the effort of pretending he isn't watching you. Cole looked up. The man was roughly his age, maybe a year or two younger. It was hard to say with certainty. Broad-shouldered, with a jaw that carried a scar healed white against copper skin, the kind of scar that comes from a blade, and has been there long enough to become just part of the face. He was leaning against a post across the way with his arms folded, in the particular configuration that means I have decided something about you. They looked at each other across the space between them. Flint, said one of the younger boys nearby, helpfully, as though identifying an exhibit in a collection. Cole nodded at Flint. Flint did not nod back. What Flint did was look at Cole with the specific expression of a man who has formed a strong opinion and is currently waiting for the evidence that will confirm it. Cole went back to checking the rope. "You split that wood," Flint said finally. His English was precise and deliberate, in the way of a language spoken carefully rather than carelessly. It needed splitting. Nobody asked you to. "No," Cole agreed. "You fixed the fence post. It was leaning." "I know it was leaning," Flint said. "It's been leaning for 2 weeks." Cole looked up at that. So it needed fixing sooner. Flint looked at him for a long moment, searching for something, either honesty or performance. Cole didn't know which one Flint expected to find, and couldn't do much about it either way since he only had the one thing to offer. "You think," Flint said slowly, "that doing things nobody asked you to do makes you belong here." It wasn't quite a question. Cole considered it as though it were one, because it deserved that. "No," he said. "I think there was wood that needed splitting, and a post that needed fixing. That's all there is to it." Flint studied him with the unhurried attention of someone who is not in a rush to conclude things, searching. Cole met the studying with the particular stillness he'd learned over years, not aggressive, not performative, just present and willing to be looked at. "You won't last here," Flint said. "Not cruel, not a threat. Just stated." "The way you state a fact about terrain, maybe not," Cole said. "But I'll be here long enough." He went back to the rope, checked the last section of it, found it acceptable, stepped back. Flint watched for another minute or two, then walked away without further comment, his boots making almost no sound on the packed earth. Neither of them had raised their voices. Neither had said anything they didn't mean. It was the most honest conversation Cole had had with another person in a very long time. Cole went back to the rope. But he thought about Flint's eyes when he'd said, "You won't last here." There was something in them that wasn't about Cole at all, something older, something that had been sitting in the man a long time before Cole arrived and wasn't going to be addressed today. He filed that away. Not everything needed to be understood immediately. Some things just needed to be noticed. He thought about Flint that evening, sitting outside his shelter, with the desert cooling fast around him, the way the desert does. Dramatic about temperature, making a statement of the shift from day to night with the same theatrical certainty it made about everything else. Hot enough by afternoon to feel like a personal criticism. Cold enough by full dark to make you pull your coat close and appreciate the fire. Flint didn't like him. Or whatever the feeling was. It wore dislike the way some things wear other things. The surface not quite matching the interior. That was fine. Cole didn't need to be liked. He'd spent 7 years being not particularly liked in various places, and had managed it well enough. What he couldn't do anything about was being disliked, for reasons that weren't the real ones. He was turning this over, watching the stars come out and doing no counting whatsoever, when he heard something. Footsteps. Soft. The kind of footsteps that are trying to be quiet but aren't quite committed enough to it to succeed. He looked up, and there she was. She had stopped about 10 feet away, in a spot where the moonlight caught the white of the veil, and amplified it, so she seemed to glow slightly against the dark of the camp behind her. Completely still, the way she'd been when he first saw her. But the veil moved fractionally in the night breeze, and that movement told him she was breathing. Present. Here deliberately. Cole said nothing. She said nothing. A long moment passed where neither of them said anything, and the fire behind Cole crackled, and somewhere in the camp, a child woke and cried once, briefly, and was soothed back into silence by a voice that knew exactly what it was doing. Then, in English that was completely unhesitating, placed and clear, "You didn't ask if I wanted this." Cole let that sit. It deserved to sit. "No," he said. "I didn't." My father said. I agreed. "But he didn't tell you that I was asked first." Cole was quiet for a moment. "That's true," he said. "I assumed. That was wrong of me." The veil moved. A slight tilt. Maybe she turned her head slightly, or maybe it was just the wind. "Hard to know. Most men wouldn't say that," she said. "Most men would be wrong." Another pause. Longer. He had the sense she was deciding something. Not about the answer to something, but about him specifically. "Can I ask now?" Cole said, a pause that had real thought in it. "Yes," she said. "You can ask. Do you want this?" The silence that followed was different from the previous light silences. Textured. Full of something active. "I don't know yet," she said. "But you are the first person who has asked me." The words landed quietly. He let them land and understood them to be a kind of answer in addition to what they literally said. "I'm Cole McBride." "I know," she said. "They told me, and you're—" He stopped because he realized, stopping, that he didn't know her name. Nobody had said her name to him. She had been referred to as Duskhorn's daughter, as the girl with the veil, as the subject of an arrangement, but not as a person who had a name that was hers. Which was actually, that was something worth sitting with. "Subble," she said, as if she'd heard the gap in his knowing and decided to fill it. Subble, he tried it. It fit her somehow, in the way that names sometimes fit people so well. You can't imagine them being called anything else, even when you've just learned it. "Running water," she added. Sable, running water. Though my father usually just calls me Sable. That's a good name, I know, she said, with the quiet matter-of-factness of someone who has formed her own opinions on things and sees no particular reason to pretend otherwise. Cole almost smiled, almost. I'm going to be honest with you, he said. I came here for land. That's the truth, and I won't dress it up. I'm not going to pretend I came here for any other reason. I know that too, but I gave my word, and I don't break my word. Whatever this is between us, I'll do it with respect. That's not everything, but it's not nothing. The veil moved. That slight inclination again? No, Sable said. It is not nothing. She looked at him, or he thought the direction of her attention was him, through all that cloth for one more long moment. Then she said, as if completing a ritual, "Good night, Cole McBride." Good night, and she walked back into the dark. Quiet, steady, the veil catching the moonlight until she moved between two tippus and was gone. Cole sat there for a while after, watching where she'd been. He went back into town the next day. He needed rope of a specific gauge and a new clasp for his canteen. And, if he was being honest with himself, which was a habit I'd never managed to break, he needed some ordinary air. A night of unexpected conversation with a woman he couldn't see had left him in need of the straightforward and the familiar. He tied Duchess outside Harkin's general store and went in. Same man. Same ledger. Same beard. Still alive, the man observed. Still alive, Cole confirmed. He gathered what he needed: rope, clasp, a tin of tobacco he didn't intend to use himself, but which made a reasonable trade gift for someone, and set his items on the counter. Heard you talk to Duskhorn, the man said. You hear things fast for a remote territory, small territory. Duskhorn's business has a way of becoming everyone's business. Cole counted coins. And? I heard you agreed to the marriage. That's right. The man counted the coins. Didn't look up. Hardin Vale knows, he said quietly. Cole went still. Just slightly. Just enough, how? Vale has ears in every town between here and the Colorado River. That's how he does business. He knows things before the people those things are about know them themselves. What's his interest in Duskhorn's land? Water rights. That river bend you're looking at. The one Duskhorn's been on for 30 years. It's the best water access in 40 miles. Vale's been working to acquire land around it for going on 5 years. Duskhorn won't sell. Won't deal. Won't even take a meeting. Cole picked up his supplies. And the girl, he said. Duskhorn's daughter. The man was quiet for a moment. 3 years back, Vale came through on what he called a trading inspection. Saw her by accident, apparently. Partial accident, the man's probably more accurate. The man's mouth pulled sideways. Vale came to Duskhorn the next week with an offer. 30 horses and a considerable amount of gold. For her. For her, Cole said nothing. Duskhorn threw him off the land, the man said. Vale had to leave with everything still in his possession, and I'm told that's not a situation. He has a lot of practice handling. No, Cole said. I'd imagine not, he put on his hat. Started for the door. Be careful, the man said. Not loudly, just to his back. Cole stopped. I appreciate that, he said, and walked out. Hardin Vale was standing outside, right there, on the board sidewalk, blocking it in the way that is technically accidental and absolutely isn't. He was not what Cole would have expected, which was his own assumption to reckon with. Vale was perhaps 45, dressed in the kind of clothes that say money without announcing it. Dark coat clean, well-fed without being soft. His face was pleasant in a way that required maintenance. His eyes were doing something more complicated than pleasant. He looked at Cole with the particular pleasure of a man who has been waiting for someone to arrive, and here they finally are. Cole McBride, he said. As if the name were familiar. You have me at a disadvantage, Cole said. Hardin Vale. He extended his hand. Cole shook it, brief, firm, the kind that gives away nothing. I know who you are, Cole said. You're the man who made an offer on Duskhorn's daughter. Something moved across Vale's face. There and gone before it had time to be read. I made a business arrangement, Vale said pleasantly. That was mischaracterized by people who didn't understand the context. 30 horses in gold for a 20-year-old woman, a bride price. It's traditional in many cultures. She's not your culture. Vale looked at him. The pleasantness was entirely surfaced now. Underneath it, something that was very patient and very used to getting what it wanted eventually. I heard you're planning to marry her, Vale said. That's right. Congratulations. The word was technically correct. The tone was not. You know, a man of your apparent quality could do considerably better than this arrangement. Duskhorn is playing you. You get a wife you've never seen and land that will be contested the moment the old chief dies. Whereas I could offer you work. Real work. Good wages. A future that doesn't require you to wager everything on a blind arrangement with people you don't know. Cole picked up Duchess's reins. I appreciate the offer, he said, but I gave my word, Cole said. I don't sell that. Vale looked at him for a long moment, then smiled, different from the first smile, less effort in it, something more private. Let me be plain, since you seem like a plain-spoken man, he said. I've been patient about the situation with Duskhorn's land for 3 years. I intend to see it resolve in my favor. One way or another. He let that sit there. I'm not saying this to threaten you, he added. Then what are you saying it for? Information. Vale stepped aside, off the sidewalk, giving the path. Congratulations on your upcoming marriage, McBride. Truly, he walked away. Cole stood in the dusty street and watched him go. This man is going to be a problem. Not because he'd said anything that was technically a threat. Because he'd said everything that was technically a threat while maintaining the form of not threatening. And a man who could do that had been practicing it for a long time and had refined the skill into something efficient. Cole rode back to the camp with more on his mind than rope and canteen clasps. Day 2 in the camp moved differently than the first. Cole did more work, more wood, helped 2 women reposition a heavy cooking structure that had settled crookedly and needed moving, sat for a stretch near a group of men, working on leather tack, not talking, just being present without demanding anything from it, not inserting himself, not performing usefulness, just being there in case proximity itself was useful. By the afternoon, people had stopped tracking him every time he moved. Which was something. He didn't see Sable. He looked, not conspicuously, not with any particular urgency, but he looked. The white veil was not visible anywhere in the camp. He thought about her, the way he thought about the land on his map. The way he thought about problems he didn't have all the information on yet, not with anxiety, but with a quality of attention that was simply paying attention, waiting for more. She'd said she didn't know yet. He didn't know yet either. That was an honest place to start. The 3rd day arrived the way 3rd days always do. Too fast. Cole woke before the sun finished deciding to come up. Lay there for a moment with the hide ceiling above him and the smell of cedar smoke in the air and the sounds of the camp, beginning its morning with the same steady purposefulness as always. Tomorrow, he would be a husband. He tried that word on for size, let it sit in his chest for a moment. Husband strange. Not bad strange, just unfamiliar. Like a coat that fits correctly, but has been on the rack so long the fabric needs wearing in before it sits right. He got up, went to work. Noticed a section of rope near the corral that had been fraying in a way that would matter eventually, and fixed it. He was coiling the rope when Flint appeared. Appearing was something Flint did rather than arriving. Strategic positioning rather than approach. One moment, the space empty and the next occupied. You've been watching the South Ridge, Flint said. Cole looked up. You noticed? I notice everything in this camp, not pride. Just fact, the rider. Comes every afternoon, stays about an hour. Leaves, counting horses, Flint said. That's what he's counting. Cole set down the rope. You know, Vale, he said. Something moved across Flint's face. There and gone. I know of him, which was technically different, and clearly not the whole answer. He told me he intended to resolve his situation, with Duskhorn's land, one way or another, Cole said. Men like that don't make statements like that without following them. Flint was quiet. The thinking kind of quiet. He came here 3 years ago, Flint said. Finally. Like placing words with deliberate care. I was the one who let him in. He said he was a trader, looking to establish a route, and you had no reason to think otherwise. None. Flat. But underneath it, not flat at all. He came in. He traded. He stayed 2 days. He saw Flint stopped. Cole waited. He saw Sable, Flint said. By accident. Or what looked like accident. Near the river. The wind took her veil for a moment. Cole said nothing. I didn't understand what he'd seen until he came back to Duskhorn the following week. With his offer, his jaw set. By then it was handled. But I was the door that let him in. The space between them held that weight. You've been watching ever since, Cole said. Someone has to. Cole looked at Flint. Really looked. This was not a man who disliked him. This was a man carrying something that wore the appearance of dislike from the outside. Something heavier. Something that had been there 3 years and was still not finished with him. Tonight, Cole said, picking up the rope. I'll be at the corral after midnight. Flint said nothing. Cole took that as something. The afternoon before the ceremony eve was the longest afternoon Cole could remember in recent years, not because nothing happened, because everything was suspended in the particular way of a place preparing for something. Women moving with specific purpose, men in low conversations near the fires, children who had been asked to behave and were managing it at approximately 60% effectiveness. A wedding. Tomorrow, at sunset. His wedding. Cole sat outside his shelter and tried not to think about it, and therefore thought about it thoroughly and without interruption. He thought about Sable, about the 2 nights she'd come to him in the dark, about the way she talked, not performing, not deflecting, just saying what she meant with the precise economy of someone who has spent 5 years with limited occasion for conversation and has learned to make each word carry its full weight. She saw things. Through cloth and through years of other people's decisions made on her behalf, she had seen things that most people didn't see. She'd seen him, he was fairly certain. From the moment he'd ridden in, Duskhorn found him there, in the long afternoon shadow outside his shelter. He came quietly for such a substantial man. Large men who moved quietly had usually learned to do so for a specific reason, either because they didn't want to frighten what they were approaching, or because they'd learned to move through the world without disturbing it more than necessary. With Duskhorn, it seemed like both. He lowered himself to the ground beside Cole without asking. With the ease of a man in his own territory who doesn't require permission for the ground beneath him, they sat. For a while, simply sat. You have questions, Duskhorn said. In English that was careful and exact. Better than Cole had realized. You speak English well, Cole said. I have spoken English for 20 years. I choose when. He looked toward the river. You have questions, one main one, Cole said. Duskhorn weighted the veil. 5 years. You told me she wore it because she was ugly. The men in your camp, they know that's not true. I can see it in how they react when the subject comes up. So what is the actual story? Duskhorn was quiet for a long time. The fire in the distance snapped once loudly, and then went back to its quieter burning. Sable's mother, Duskhorn said. She died 3 years ago. Before she died, she made me promise. He paused. She said, protect her until you find someone who doesn't need to see her to choose her. Cole looked at him. So I made a story, Duskhorn said. Ugly, unwanted. Men who came for the wrong reasons stopped coming. He turned and looked at Cole directly. 5 years ago, a trader came from the north. He saw Sable near the water. He tried to take her, not with money, simply take her. Cole said nothing. My men stopped him, Duskhorn said. But after that, he shook his head slowly. She was 15. She didn't understand what had happened or why. She only knew that someone had looked at her and tried to own her, the way you own an object you want, the fire. The stars beginning their arrival. So I put the veil on. Duskhorn said. I told her it was her choice. It was not entirely her choice. That is, he stopped, his hands on his knees, not moving. That is the thing I have to carry. Cole looked at this man, 55 years old, chief of his people, and the specific private exhaustion of a forefather who has been doing what he believed was right and has known for some time that right and correct are not always the same thing. She forgave you? Cole said. I have not asked, Duskhorn said. I am afraid of the answer. You should ask, Cole said. Whatever the answer is, Duskhorn looked at him. You are an unusual man, Cole McBride. I'm really not. The men who come from outside. They want things. Animals. Position. You want land, yes. But the way you want it, he searched for the word. It is not wanting to possess. It is wanting to belong to. Cole looked at the ground. My father built a ranch from nothing, he said. I built one from almost nothing. I watched it burn. He paused. Belonging to something that can be taken away isn't belonging. It's borrowing. I want to belong to something the right way this time. Something I built with someone. Something that's ours. The word ours landed between them. Cole hadn't meant to say it that way. But he had. And Duskhorn heard it. And something in the old man's face settled into something that might have been relief. The particular relief of a man who made a bet a long time ago and is now getting his first indication that it might pay. She told me this morning, Duskhorn said, rising with the effort of a large man who has been carrying a large life for a long time, that she has decided. He looked down at Cole. She said yes. Her own yes, not mine. Something in his face that was too large for one word. I am grateful for that. More than I know how to say. He walked away. Cole sat there with his empty cup, thinking about a girl of 15 who had looked in the water and said she could see everything. Both things, day and night at the same time, and thought, I'm going to make sure she gets to look in the water again. The night of the ceremony eve was clear and cold and quiet in the specific way that Cole had learned to notice. Not the ordinary quiet of a sleeping camp, but the quality of quiet that contains something else inside it. He lay still, counted the night sounds, wind, small animals, the horses in the corral shifting weight which was normal, then a sound that wasn't any of those things. Soft and deliberate, the sound of someone trying very hard not to make sound and almost succeeding. Coming from the direction of the corral. Cole was on his feet before the thought was complete. Boots, coat, no lamp. He moved low and along the shadowed sides of things and came around to where he could see the corral. 3 shapes, crouched at the far fence line. Working, he watched for 10 seconds, long enough to understand what he was seeing. They were cutting the rope, not the whole fence, specifically the sections nearest the prize horses, the ones that would run first and farthest if spooked, the ones Duskhorn's warriors valued most. This was not random. This was planned. Cole's mind ran the calculation fast. 3 men, his empty hands, the terrain. Call out, and they scatter into the dark with a 5-minute head start. Stay quiet, and the horses are gone by morning, and the ceremony is disrupted, and whatever Vale had planned for the disruption comes next. 3rd option. He bent down, picked up 3 rocks from the ground, palm-sized, the right weight for the right purpose, and moved. He came in from the north side, wide arc, keeping the wind in his face so the horses wouldn't telegraph his presence with their ears. He knew horses. He knew what they gave away. Got to within 15 feet before one of the men's instincts fired and the man turned. Cole was already moving. The first rock caught the nearest man on the shoulder. Not where he'd aimed, but enough to make him stagger and shout, which was the actual goal. The shout was the point. The shout would bring people. He needed to buy time for the shout to work. The second man came fast. Cole dropped low and drove his shoulder into the man's midsection, and they went down together hard. Cole got an elbow in, and the man made the sound that meant he was out of it for at least a minute. The third man was the smart one, had held back. Was evaluating. Cole got upright. His ribs hurt in the way that said bruised, not broken. which was the better of the two options available. His left hand had scraped something and was bleeding. He squared up against the third man in the dark, both of them breathing hard, a knife catching the moonlight in the man's right hand. Cole had a bruised rib and two hands. Keekwal, roughly the man with the knife, took a step forward, and from behind him came the sound of a great many feet moving at once, the particular controlled sound of people who have grown up, moving through dark territory and know how to do it without announcing themselves, until announcing is what they want to do. The third man heard it, went still. Cole looked past him, Flint. 6 warriors, 3 directions. Moving, the third man dropped the knife. Duskhorn arrived after, which Cole had begun to understand was his method, arriving when the scene was contained and readable. He looked at the captured men, at the cut ropes, at Cole, who was holding his ribs and bleeding from one hand and had lost a significant argument with his coat at some point. "Vale's men," Duskhorn said, after examining a particular ring on the nearest man's hand. "I recognized one of them from town," Cole said. "I wasn't certain enough to say so before. I am now. He wants the horses gone before the ceremony," Duskhorn said. "Horses lost. People looking. Then something else." "That's how it works," Cole said. "One thing opens the door for the next thing." Flint stood where he was after the prisoners were taken away, looking at Cole with something different from what he'd been looking at him with before. Simpler. The look of a man who has updated an assessment and is not the type to pretend the update hasn't happened. "Tomorrow," Flint said. Finally, Cole waited. "Tomorrow I will stand at the east position." During the ceremony, east was the position of protection. Cole had watched enough in 3 days to know the directional meanings. "I appreciate that," Cole said. Flint nodded once, sharp, decisive, and walked away into the dark. The morning of the ceremony, Duskhorn came to Cole early, not as a chief, as something without a clean title, the particular mode of a man who needs to say something and has decided that the titles can wait. He brought 2 clay cups of something hot and bitter and warming, in the way that goes somewhere deeper than the stomach. "When I told you she was ugly," Duskhorn said. "When I said no man wanted her. I've said those words for 5 years. To keep away the wrong ones." He looked at the cup in his hands. "She has heard those words for 5 years." Cole went still. "She was 15 when I first said them," Duskhorn said. "She is 20 now." And somewhere in those 5 years, he stopped. His hands around the cup were tight. "She started to believe them." Cole said nothing. Let that have the full space it needed. "My daughter is beautiful," Duskhorn said. His voice went more controlled rather than less, its own kind of breaking. "She was born with eyes that are different, one color, another color, and when she was small she would look in the water and say, 'Father, I can see everything, both things.' Day and night at the same time." She stopped looking in the water. He said, 5 years ago, Cole held his cup. "She has not chosen to speak to a man voluntarily in 5 years, Duskhorn said. "She came to you, both nights." "I know because I checked." His face contained something too large for it to hold easily, but he held it anyway. "Her yes this morning was her own yes, not mine. I am grateful for that more than I know how to say." He walked away. Cole sat with his empty cup and thought about a 15-year-old girl who had looked in the water and seen both things, and thought, "I am going to make sure she gets to look again." The camp spent the day preparing. Cole mostly stayed out of the way, which was the single most useful thing he could do. Ceremony had its own logic, and his job today was simply to show up. He cleaned himself up as well as desert camp circumstances allowed. New shirt from the general store, the clean one he'd been keeping. Boots as polished as they were going to get. His coat had a new tear in the back shoulder from the corral fight, but it was on the back. He looked at himself in the basin water, a man who had been living rough for a long time, and had cleaned up for something worth cleaning up for. That would have to do. The ceremony fires were lit at mid-afternoon. The center of the camp transformed slowly into something ceremonial. Fires positioned with intention, hides with old symbols, the particular smell of herbs burning that changed the air into something that felt different in the lungs. The whole camp dressed in ceremony. Even the old man who was always whittling had put his knife away. Drums. They started as the sun began its descent. Not loud, not driving, just placed. A heartbeat that belonged to all of them. Cole stood where he'd been placed, center, in front of the main fire, held his hat in his hands, turning it and waited. The drums shifted, more directed, and the whole camp turned at once toward the space between two tippas at the northern edge. Cole turned too, and she came out. She was escorted by two elder women who walked close without touching, giving her the space to walk her own walk. The veil for this was not the everyday white. It had been worked, stitched with patterns in thread the same color as the cloth, so you had to look to see them. Stars behind clouds. She walked slowly, not from uncertainty, from placement, each step deliberate. She was 20 years old and had been told she was wrong for 5 years. And she was walking through the center of everything she knew, toward a man she had chosen in the dark. And she walked like someone who has made the decision all the way through and intends to keep making it with every step. Cole's heart did something it had not done in a very long time. It opened, like a door he'd forgotten was there. On hinges that hadn't rusted after all, she stopped in front of him, one arm's length away. He could see her breathing through the veil, could see her hands holding themselves together with effort, the tension of it visible. She was nervous, so was he. He was not a man who generally got nervous. The elder women tied the red cord around their wrists, one end to his, one to hers. Thin, soft, stronger than it looked. Duskhorn moved toward his daughter. He stopped in front of her, said something private, too low for Cole to hear, didn't try to, then lifted the veil slowly, her feet first, bare, small, the ceremony dress hide-worked soft and decorated, her hands, small and capable, her face. Cole stopped breathing. Not from shock, from the specific feeling of being in the presence of something real after a long time of things being approximate. She was beautiful, not in a way that asked anything of him. Just beautiful, the way morning is beautiful, requiring nothing from the observer, high cheekbones, a face precise and strong and somehow also soft, dark hair loose for the first time in 5 years, and her eyes, one brown, the warm brown of earth after rain, the other gray-blue, the color of the sky in the moment before morning fully decides to be morning. She was looking at him directly, with the full force of those mismatched, extraordinary eyes, and in them, fear. The specific fear of a person who has been told they are wrong for a very long time, now standing in front of someone with the power to confirm it, not knowing which way it's going to go. Cole did not look away. He would not look away. He leaned forward just slightly. Enough for only her. I've been talking to you in the dark for 2 nights, he said. And I already knew, her brow creased slightly. Knew what? That you were worth showing up for? Her eyes, those extraordinary mismatched eyes, went bright. The way eyes go bright when something that has been pressed against them for a very long time finally stops pressing. One tear. Down the right side of her face. She didn't wipe it, didn't hide it. Let it be there in the light, real and unhidden. The camp broke into sound. Not chaos. The sound of a community that has been holding something hope for 5 years and has been given permission to breathe. Duskhorn looked at his daughter. Then at Cole. It was the face of a man who has been carrying a stone for 5 years and has just been told he can set it down. In English, clearly, I called my daughter ugly. For 5 years, to protect her, his voice held. Just. I was wrong about the method. I was not wrong about what I was protecting. He looked at Sable. She is everything her mother was. And everything her mother would have wanted her to become. He looked at Cole. Do not waste that. No, sir, Cole said, and meant it with everything he had. Afterward, the celebration was the kind that seems to have always been there, waiting for an occasion to justify it. Food and drums and fire, and the specific pleasure of a community that has been waiting to exhale doing exactly that. Cole and Sable sat together at the edge of it. Close. The red cord still at their wrists. Nobody had removed it yet, and Cole didn't know the protocol and didn't ask. She was looking at the celebration with an expression he couldn't quite read. Not happiness exactly, not sadness, but something in between that was probably more real than either. All right, he said. Strange, she said. Everything looks the same. But, you're not behind the veil. Yes, she looked at her own hands. It is strange. Being seen, you've always been seen. Just not by the right people. She looked at him. He looked back, and then she laughed. Not a polite laugh or a social laugh, a real one. Small and surprised and like something that had been waiting behind a door for a long time and had just discovered the door was unlocked. You say things that are very, she searched, honest? Direct, she said. You say things directly, I've been told that. Usually as a criticism, it isn't one, she said. And she was still smiling when she said it, and the smile did something to her face that her face had clearly been designed to do and had been prevented from doing for years. Cole looked at the fire. Your father told me, he said, that you used to look in the water. When you were small, you said you could see everything. Both things. Day and night. She went quiet. He told you that. He did. A long pause. I stopped, she said. Looking, I know. The fire crackled. Might be time to start again, Cole said. She didn't answer that directly. But she didn't argue with it either. And when she turned back to watch the celebration, she watched it with both eyes open. All the way open. For the first time in my 5 years, Sable Running Water sat in the full light of the fire, with her face uncovered, and her eyes on the world and nothing between her and being seen, and nobody looked away, not one person. Which told Cole everything he needed to know about where the truth had always lived, and how long a lie can last when fear is the one telling it. He sat with it, beside a woman who was learning how to take up her own space again, and thought, tomorrow, there will be things to deal with. Vale, the Ridge Watcher, the plans already in motion. Tomorrow, but tonight there was a fire, and a woman laughing for the first time in years. And somewhere out there past the ridge, a man named Vale was still making plans. Cole knew that. He'd deal with it in the morning. But tonight, this was real. And real was something he hadn't had in a very long time. Cole woke up married. That was the first thought, clear and simple and slightly alarming in the way that correct things sometimes are. He lay there in the early light of the shelter and counted that new reality, added it to the list of things that were true now. He was married. He had land. Actually, he had a lot of things that hadn't existed 6 days ago, which was considerably more than something. He got up. The camp was quieter than usual, the specific stillness of a place that had done something large and was taking its time returning to ordinary. Cole walked out into the early morning Arizona sky, that color it gets before the sun finishes arriving, not blue, not anything. Like the world is paused between decisions. He'd thought about that color on the ride in. He thought about it differently now. One eye brown, one eye gray-blue. Day and night at the same time. He shook that off before it could take him somewhere soft. There was work to do. Vale. He found Flint at the east edge of the camp watching the ridge. As if he'd never stopped. They stood together. He's coming today, Cole said. Yes, how many men? Our count yesterday was 12. Could be more. Cole nodded. 12 armed men against a camp with 40 warriors, but a camp with families, with children, the specific vulnerability of a place that is also a home. Vale knew that. Men like Vale always knew exactly where the softness was. He'll come to the front, Cole said. He's done with sneaking. The 3 men last night were his sneaking. Now he wants to be seen negotiating. He wants witnesses to something that looks reasonable, while being unreasonable. While being completely unreasonable in the form of an offer. Flint looked at him. You know this type of mind. I know what it does. A pause. Then Flint said, what do you need in that? Right there. That was different. Not the folded arms, not the waiting for Cole to prove himself wrong. Just, what do you need? Cole kept his face even. Didn't make anything of it. Because making something of it would embarrass Flint, and embarrassing Flint would undo it. I need the camp to look ordinary, Cole said. Fires going. Women working. Children where children usually are. Nobody looking like they were expecting anyone. And where will the warriors be? Everywhere he can't see, Flint's mouth moved very slightly. Not a smile. The cousin of a smile. The one that comes when a plan might actually work, and you? At the front. I'll talk to him first. Alone. For the first part. Yes. Flint looked at the ridge again. You are either very confident, he said, or very stubborn. My mother said the same thing, Cole said. She couldn't decide which either. The not-quite smile moved slightly further along its trajectory. I'll position the men, Flint said. Thank you. Flint walked away. Cole kept watching the ridge, waiting. He went to Duskhorn, explained. Duskhorn listened and agreed to let Cole speak first. Before he let Cole stand up, Duskhorn said, She slept. Last night. The whole night. I know because I checked, he paused. She has not slept a full night in 3 years. Cole stood, nodded once, and went to face Hardin Vale. He didn't wait long. An hour, maybe, before the sound of horses came from the south. Multiple horses. The unhurried pace of people who want to be seen arriving with confidence. Cole stood at the camp entrance, hands visible, coat open, looking like a man who had nowhere to be and wasn't in a hurry to get there. Vale rode in at the front of 12 armed men. All rifles in scabbards, pistols holstered, nothing actively threatening, just present. The way 12 armed men are present, which is its own kind of threatening, without requiring any additional demonstration. Vale himself looked exactly as he had in town. Pressed coat, pleasant face doing its maintenance. Eyes doing something more complicated. He pulled his horse up 15 feet from Cole, looked down at him, looked at the camp, ordinary, fires burning, women working, children at their business. McBride, he said, Vale. Interesting place for you to be standing. It's my camp, Cole said. My family lives here. Something moved behind Vale's eyes. Fast, got married last night, Cole said. Duskhorn's daughter. Nice ceremony. You missed it, congratulations. Technically correct. Tonally not. Thank you, Cole said, as if he meant it. Vale dismounted. Walk to a conversational distance. I want to make you an offer, he said. The land along the river bend. I'll pay 3 times current market value. Cash. Today, no, Cole said. Vale blinked. Once. You haven't heard the number, doesn't matter. The land isn't mine to sell, Cole said. I'm part of a family that lives on it. You don't sell your family's home. Vale was quiet for a moment. The pleasant face doing its work. This territory is going to change, he said. The railroad is coming within 3 years. When it does, the government is going to have opinions about Apache land claims versus filed deeds. I'm offering you a way out before that gets complicated. Cole listened to all of it, gave it the space it asked for. Then, you're threatening us with the railroad. I'm giving you information. You're telling me the government is coming for this land regardless, and you want me to hand it to you first. The answer is no. The answer was no before you started. I want to be honest with you so you don't feel the conversation went somewhere. It was never going. The pleasantness dropped from Vale's face. In stages. Like a building settling. I had 3 men here last night, he said. They didn't come back. No, Cole said. They didn't. That was a mistake. Cutting the corral ropes was the mistake, Cole said. Sending 3 men to a camp with 40 warriors was the second one. You've made a few in a row now. I'm trying to help you not make another. Vale looked at him for a long time. You're calm for a man with 12 guns in his general direction. I'm calm, Cole said. Because there are 40 warriors in this camp who have been watching you since you crested that ridge, and 6 of them are within earshot of this conversation right now. And all of them are waiting to see what kind of man you decide to be in the next 30 seconds. Silence. Vale's eyes moved. Slowly, carefully. looking at the positions he hadn't noticed, and he saw enough. A shape behind a supply stack, a figure on a ridge that hadn't been there before, a shadow near the corral that was too still to be shadow. His men shifted, horses feeling the shift. Cole waited the 30 seconds. The specific ones where a man decides whether his pride is bigger than his reason, or his reason is bigger than his pride. Vale's jaw worked. His hands went still. Then he took one step back. "This isn't finished, McBride." "I know," Cole said, "but it's finished for today." Vale looked at him, a long look, the look of a man making a memory of a face. Then he turned, mounted, rode. His 12 men rode with him. Cole stood and watched until the dust settled, and the horses became sound, and then the sound became nothing. Then he breathed out. His ribs still hurt. He pressed his hand to them briefly, privately, and turned to find Flint standing behind him. Flint was looking at the direction Vale had gone. "He'll come back," Flint said, "eventually. But not like this. Not 12 men in daylight. He'll have to find another way, and that takes time." Cole looked at him. "Time that can be used? For what?" "Land filings, deed registrations. You've been on this land for 30 years, but the territory officials don't necessarily know what they're supposed to know. When the railroad comes, the government will want documentation." He paused. "I know how to file a claim. I know what documents are needed. I know which officials are honest, and which ones Vale has probably already spoken to." Flint was quiet. "This is what you did before. Before the ranch burned. I know what I didn't do," Cole said. "I didn't file correctly. I was too busy working the land to protect it on paper. I'm not making that mistake twice." Flint studied him. "You would do this," he said, "for a people who are not yours." "They're mine now," Cole said. "I married into them. Problems are my problems. Their protection is my work. Unless you're going to tell me that's not how it works here." A long pause. "That is exactly how it works here," Flint said. "Then let me work." Duskhorn came out from behind them. He'd been watching. Of course he had. Cole explained the plan. The county office, the filings, the 30-day window. Duskhorn listened. Nodded. "I'll ride with you," Flint said. Both men looked at him. Officials who have been talking to Vale need to see that this isn't just one cowboy filing papers, Flint said. They need to see there are people behind this claim. "You'd go into a county official's office," Cole said. "I've done harder things, flat, simple, without asking for anything in response." Cole nodded. "First light tomorrow." After Duskhorn had gone back to the camp, Cole told Duchess about the plan while brushing her down. She was unimpressed, which was fair. She couldn't do much about Hardin Vale either. Then he went to find Sable. She was at the river, sitting on a flat rock with her shoes off, and her feet in the water, her hair still loose, as it had been since the ceremony, as if putting it back up would require reintroducing a constraint that no longer had a reason to exist. She heard him coming and didn't turn. "He left," she said. "He left. He'll come back." "Yes," she nodded. He sat on the rock beside her at a small distance. "I know about the land filings," she said. "My father told me. Already he tells me things now." A quietness in that with a whole history in it. "He came and sat outside my shelter this morning before the sun, and talked. For a long time he told me he's afraid to ask you if you forgive him," Cole said. "I know." She looked at the water. "He cried. This morning? When he was telling me things." A pause. "I have never seen my father cry." "They save it," Cole said. "For things worth saving it for." She turned and looked at him. Those eyes in daylight were even more extraordinary than by firelight. The brown one and the gray-blue one, each catching the sun differently, creating the effect of a face illuminated by two different lights at once. "Day and night, Flint has not left this territory in 3 years," she said. "He went to the Eastern Trading Post 3 years ago and came back the same day and has not left since." Cole absorbed that. He volunteered. Cole said, "I know," she said. "That is what I am telling you." He sat with the weight of it. What it meant about how much had shifted in 3 days, in one night specifically, in the hours after midnight when he had stood in the dark, and held off 3 men with a bruised rib in his own hands. "I'll be back in 3 days," he said. "Maybe 4, I know. I'm not leaving because I want to." "I know that too." She looked at the water again. "My mother used to say that water knows where it's going, even when it looks like it's just sitting still. It knows." She watched the current. She said people are the same. You know where you're going before you know you know. Cole watched the current with her. "Moving clear, where are you going?" He said. She thought about it. For a real amount of time. "Here," she said. "I think I am going here, to this river, to building something on this land." 2, she stopped. Started again, to learning how to be seen. The last part came out quiet. "Still a little tender, you were always worth seeing." Cole said. She looked at him, and this time she didn't look away quickly. This time she let herself look, and let herself be seen looking, and the whole transaction of 2 people seeing each other clearly, without either of them flinching, lasted long enough to mean something. Then she looked back at the water. "You should go," she said, "so you can come back faster." Cole almost smiled. "Yes, ma'am," he said, and she laughed. Small and real and still a little unused, like something being gently reconditioned. He stood. Set his hat on. 3 days, he said. 3 days, she agreed. He walked back toward the camp. Behind him he heard a sound. Small, deliberate. He turned. Sable had leaned forward over the water, looking at her own reflection, both eyes open. Looking. He turned back and kept walking. Didn't say anything about it, because some moments are damaged by being spoken about. And he wasn't the kind of man who didn't know that. First light, Cole and Flint rode out together. Side by side, neither of them talking. They were, Cole thought, 2 men who had worked out that words are for when you need them, and silence is for when you don't. And right now you didn't. The desert in early morning had a quality the rest of the day never quite recovered. Cold and quiet and impossibly clear. Every rock and cactus and ridge cut sharp against the brightening sky, like the world had been drawn in hard pencil first and hadn't been softened yet. Cole counted things out of habit. Miles to Red Rock Flats. Time to the county office. The names of officials he knew versus officials he'd have to assess on arrival. The documents he needed, and in what order. Beside him, Flint watched the ridges. After about an hour, Flint said, "The man in Texas. The one who burned your ranch? Did you ever know?" Cole said. Flint quiet. "Are you at peace with that?" Cole thought about it honestly. Not peace. More like. "I decided to stop using it as the reason for things." "There's a difference." Flint considered that. "The man I let into our camp 3 years ago," he said. "Vale, you couldn't have known." "I should have asked more questions." "Probably," Cole said. "But should have doesn't help you ride." Flint looked at him. "My grandmother used to say something like that. Wise woman. She would have found you strange." Flint said, "Most people do." "She would have found you acceptable," Flint said. Despite the strange, Cole looked at the horizon. "I'll take acceptable." They rode. Red Rock Flats looked exactly the same. Because 3 days is not enough time for a town to change, and towns are more committed to consistency than people anyway. The man at the general store looked at Cole, then at Flint, then at Cole again. "Still alive," the man said. "Married," Cole said. The man blinked. "You actually did, and you're back because land filings, county office. Who's the honest one?" The man looked at him, then at Flint, then back at Cole. "Margaret Pierce, land records clerk, 15 years. Doesn't take meetings outside office hours, and doesn't take anything else. Vale has tried to buy her. She filed the attempt as an official record." The man almost smiled. "She is not a woman who enjoys being underestimated." "Where?" "County seat. 2 hours east, and the other one, Henricks. Deputy Land Commissioner. He has a new horse. Very nice horse for a man on a government salary." "Got it, McBride," the man said as Cole turned. "Vale was here yesterday. Filed a preliminary inquiry on the River Bend land. Establishing a prior claim." Cole's jaw tightened. "Did Pierce handle it?" "Henricks, of course." "You might want to hurry," the man said. Cole put on his hat. "We're hurrying," he said. Margaret Pierce was exactly what the man had described, 60 or near enough. The kind of woman who has been doing a difficult job for a long time and has stopped being impressed by anything. That isn't competence. Her office was meticulous. Her desk was organized in the way of someone whose mind organized the same way. Files in order, stamps in order. A small photograph of a dog that looked extremely serious in the corner. She looked at Cole, then at Flint, then at the documents Cole spread on her desk. She read them carefully. Actually carefully. "Not performing it. Duskhorn's territory," she said. "Yes. There was a preliminary inquiry filed yesterday by a Hardin Vale." "I know. That's why we're here today and not tomorrow." She looked at the documents again. "These are good," she said, meaning the quality, the care, the detail. "I had help compiling the history," Cole said. 30 years of occupation, boundary markers, water usage, construction dates, who compiled it. The chief's daughter. My wife, he said it simply. She has a very accurate sense of spatial boundaries and an excellent memory for things she's observed. Pierce looked at Flint. "And you are?" "And you are Flint Overstone," Flint said. "I am a warrior of this territory. I am here to confirm the documented boundaries are accurate." Pierce looked at him for a moment. Then at her desk, "Henricks filed Vale's inquiry," she said, "which I will be reviewing shortly for procedural compliance. Because there are specific procedural requirements for preliminary land inquiries. And I have a feeling," she tapped the file quietly, "that some of them may not have been fully met." Cole looked at her. She looked back. Not smiling. Not smiling. "Standard processing takes 30 days for complete filings with full documentation," she said. She picked up Cole's documents. "This appears to be complete." She set it in a specific stack, different from the others. "I'll begin review today, thank you." "Cole, don't thank me. I'm doing my job." She looked at Flint. "Both of you, don't do anything dramatic on the way out of town." "Define dramatic?" Cole said. She looked at him. "Goodbye, Mr. McBride," she said. They rode back faster than they'd come. Not because anything was chasing them, because they both wanted to be back. After about an hour, Flint said, "That woman, Pierce," Cole said, "she will actually do it. She will actually do it, because it is right. Not because we asked well, because it is right." Cole confirmed. Flint thought about that. "There are more people like that than Vale expects," he said. "That's the thing Vale keeps getting wrong," Cole said. "He thinks the world runs the way he runs it. It doesn't. It runs on both kinds." He looked at the horizon. "That's why men like him keep being surprised." Flint nodded once. They rode. They came back to the camp in the light afternoon. The sun was doing the orange and red thing it did in Arizona, painting the desert in colors that seemed excessive and were exactly right. People saw them coming. News of the morning, Vale's departure, the confrontation, had moved through the camp in the way things move through small communities, which is immediately and with considerable creative elaboration. By the time Cole and Flint rode back in, the version circulating had the 12 guns become 18, and Cole standing alone with bare hands and several additional details that Cole was confident had not occurred. He didn't correct any of it. Duskhorn met them. Cole gave the short version. Pierce, the filing, the 30-day window now running. Vale's inquiry was rejected for procedural noncompliance, Cole said. Turns out Henricks missed several requirements. Pierce is investigating Henricks separately. Duskhorn was quiet. 30 years, he said. 30 years. On paper now. The old chief looked at Cole, then he did something. He looked at Cole with the expression of a man who has many words and has chosen not to use a single one of them, and nodded. Once. Deep, deliberate. The kind of nod that means everything a man won't say out loud. Flint watched him go. He doesn't do that, Flint said. What? Look at someone like that. Like they are family. Not staff, not ally. He paused. He looked at me that way once. When my father died, a beat. He does not do it twice. Cole didn't say anything. What was there to say? He put Duchess in the corral and took care of her, the way she'd earned. Fed, watered, brushed down thoroughly. The brushing she leaned into with the tired contentment of a horse that has been ridden well and knows it. "I know," he told her. She flicked one ear. "We're staying," he said. "This is it." Both ears came forward. He finished. Went to find Sable. She was in her shelter, sitting cross-legged on a woven mat, working on a piece of leather with the focused attention of someone doing something they find genuinely satisfying. Her hair was still loose. She looked younger than 20 this way, and more herself than any version of herself he'd seen yet. She looked up. "3 days," she said. "You said 3 days, I know. It was 1 day. You said 3 days and you came back in 1. The filing went faster than expected. She looked at him steadily. "You hurried. The filing genuinely, Cole McBride. You hurried." He looked at the ceiling of the shelter for a moment. "The filing went fast," he said. "And also I hurried." She looked back at her stitching. And she was doing the thing with her mouth again. The thing that was almost a smile, and knew it and didn't care. Cole sat down across from her. "How was the day?" he said. "My father came to talk again. 2 hours in the afternoon." She looked at her hands. "He asked me if I forgave him, and I told him I was still working on some parts of it, but that I understood the parts I'd had time to understand." She paused. He said that was the most honest answer anyone had given him in years. "It is the most honest answer," Cole said. He cried again. She said, "He is going to have to stop doing that, or it's going to change how I think about him. Or it'll change how you think about crying." She looked at him. "You have an answer for everything." "Not everything. Just the things I've thought about enough." She went back to her stitching. The shelter was quiet in the good way. The way that comes from two people who don't need to fill the space between them with anything other than what's there. Cole hadn't felt that in a long time. Maybe never. Quite like this. "What are you making?" he said. She held it up. A piece of worked leather, stitched not with decoration but with geometry, shapes that had meaning he could feel without being able to read. "It's for the doorway of a house," she said. "A marker." For the entrance, she looked at it. "I have been making it for 2 years. I made it not knowing who it was for." Cole looked at it. "Now you know," he said. She looked at it too. "Now I know," she said. The fire outside crackled. The desert did its nighttime thing, cold, clear, the stars arriving in their usual way, as if they had something to show, and had been waiting for it to get dark enough to show it. The next weeks were not simple. Vale did exactly what Cole had expected. Shifted to slower, procedural methods. Letters to officials. Inquiries to the Territorial Land Commission. Documents that appeared and needed answering with other documents. Cole answered them. He spent hours at a rough-hewn table with paper and ink, writing in the particular language of official processes, a language he'd had to learn by losing in Texas and hadn't forgotten. Flint sat with him sometimes, not writing, watching, learning the language in his own way. Occasionally one of them said something and the other answered, and they went back to the quiet. It was, Cole thought, the most natural thing he'd done in years. Sitting with someone, working, not needing to fill the space with anything but the work. Sable came to the table and read what he was writing. Once she said, "This boundary marker. 10 feet northwest." Cole looked at it. "How do you know?" "I walked that boundary 3 months ago," she said. "I walked all of them. Every season. I was behind a veil, and I had nothing else to do." Cole changed the measurement and looked at her with something that had no name he knew, but felt like recognition. The specific recognition of realizing someone is exactly what the situation needs. And also more than that, and that both of those things are true simultaneously. She caught him looking. "What?" she said. "Nothing. You are making a face. I don't make faces. You do." "This one," she indicated, briefly, the general region of his expression. "It is the face you make when you have thought of something you have decided not to say out loud." Cole went back to writing. "I was thinking," he said, "that you are going to be indispensable." A pause. "Indispensable," she repeated. Yes, that is better than useful. It is considerably better. I know, she said. She went back to the map she was drawing, and she was doing the thing with her mouth again. The letter from Margaret Pierce arrived on the 28th day. Cole read it twice, then sat very still for a moment, then went and found Duskhorn. The chief read it. Read it again. Official recognition, he said, pending final commission approval, which Pierce says is a formality. Vale's inquiry was rejected for procedural noncompliance. Cole paused. Pierce is investigating Henricks separately. Duskhorn was quiet. 30 years, he said. 30 years. On paper now, Duskhorn looked at the letter for a long time. Then he did what he had done once before. Looked at Cole with the expression of a man who has chosen silence over every word available to him, and nodded, once. Deliberate. The weight of everything he wasn't saying contained in it. Then he called for Flint. The celebration that followed was smaller than the wedding, but different kind of important. Fires. Food. The ease of a community that has been holding its breath and has been given the word to exhale. Cole sat beside Sable. The red cord was long gone from their wrists. But something else was there now that didn't need a cord, built in weeks of table work and boundary measurements, and a woman who knew the land better than any document, and a man who knew how to make documents say what the land knew. Vale won't stop, Sable said. No, he'll find another way. He'll try, and we'll find another way back. Yes, she looked at the fire. My mother would have liked you, she said, not looking at him when she said it. Saying it to the fire carefully like a thing that mattered. Cole looked at the fire too. What was she like? He said she was like water, Sable said. She went around things and kept going. She never stopped to be angry about the rocks. She just went around. She paused. I am not like that. I stop. I look at the rock. I think about the rock for a long time. Then you go around. Then I go around. But I think about the rock. Cole looked at the fire. My father was like that, he said. Took his time. People thought he was slow. He shook his head. He wasn't slow. He was thorough. Your father built a ranch, she said. He did, and you built one? And lost it, here, she said. And came here, he said. The fire crackled and found Sis, she said. Quietly. Yes, he said. Just as quietly. The desert night did its thing around them. Cold and enormous and full of stars that had been there, long before anyone had needed them, and would be there long after. Cole looked up at them. He used to count the stars when he couldn't sleep. Back when counting was how he kept himself from thinking about Texas. Back when keeping the mind busy was the only way through a night. He didn't need to count anything tonight. He just looked beside him. Sable was looking too, both eyes open, wide open. Both colors catching the firelight differently. The brown one warm, the gray-blue one luminous. Day and night, I see. Everything she'd said once, small. Looking in the water. She could. She always could. The world just needed to get out of the way long enough to let her. Cole looked at the camp around the fire. The people in it. The life happening in it. The specific quality of a place that knows what it is. He thought about spring. About ground that was workable and wood that needed cutting. And a foundation that didn't exist yet. About all the things that hadn't been built yet and would be. About two people who didn't know how to build a house, figuring it out together, which was, he thought, probably how most good things got built. Not by people who already knew how, by people who were willing to figure it out. We should start building in the spring, he'd said. She had not built a house before. He had not built a house before. She said that was not close enough. He said they'd figure it out. She'd said he said that about everything. He'd said it was because it had been true about most things so far spring. He was going home, not back to somewhere. Forward to somewhere. For the first time in his life, those were the same place. He was already there.